Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony Blanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall, and we're going to take a look at the results of the recent UK elections, also the votes for lifetime legislation and local taxation. Robert, good to see you.
And you as well, Tony. Good to see you again.
Thanks very much for sparing me some time. Now,
Pleasure.
let's start off with those. Well, they were sort of local elections, but in the case of Northern Ireland, they're sort of bit more than that. So can we start with England?
Yes, it's easier.
Losing the flagships of Wandsworth and Westminster wasn't very good.
It certainly isn't good. It certainly isn't good. And those have been paraded, as you rightly say, as Conservative flagships.
Yeah.
And there are disaffected people there. My own sense is what I call the softer issues, things like equality, if I may term climate change as a softer issue. And so perhaps played in more there than inflation, cost of living, and energy prices. But no, they weren't good results.
But the thing is, Robert, Wandsworth and Westminster were always very, very low council tax areas under the previous regime. Is that going to be the case with the new people?
I doubt it very much, because local authority costs are climbing. That's part because central government does push quite a bit out to them, more I think than they should do.
Yeah.
But yes, I think local authority costs, which manifest themselves in the council tax, are going to continue to rise. Short term, maybe the government will put some caps on, but I see it as inevitable, unless there's some other, we go back to some sort of kind of rating thing entirely based on values of property. But you and I may vaguely remember that, but
that was just before the poll tax, wasn't it?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. But I personally think as these pressures come on local authorities, there will be a look back to what do we have before the poll tax.
Yeah. And of course, as far as business rates are concerned, am I correct in saying they effectively go direct to the government?
They do. They do. That's right. And again, I think there has to be some apportionment, if I could put it like that, of business rates that go to local authorities and to central government. Of course, central government is under huge borrowing pressures at the moment, and I don't think they're going to make that sort of change in the short term. But I do agree. I think that has to come.
Now, seeing quite a bit of a liberal resurgence, and I note that my old local authority, Woking Borough Council, has now become liberal controlled. Quite where that puts anything, I'm not too sure. But once again, it's a bit of a sign of the times, isn't it, Robert?
It is. Again, these constituents have what to now have been relatively affluent middle class, older people who also have pensions and more financial security, and they tend to look beyond the issues of cost of living and energy. How much longer that will continue, I'm not sure.
And of course, I suppose quite a few of them feel a bit let down over the triple lock.
Well, indeed, yes. Pensions are important in all those.
Yeah.
Certainly Woking and Wandsworth, and I guess Westminster as well.
Frankly. Yeah. So I suppose the next question is, how unhappy are the current blue areas of the north that sort of went Conservative at the last general election?
I don't think they're as unhappy as the south. Frankly, as long as they have money allocated to them, whether that's through grants, tax concessions, and so on, they're the areas where we're going to build up what I call the other end of supply chains. As global supply chains contract, I think we will find some reindustrialization, if that's a real word, of the north of England, and those sort of things are more important to them than perhaps the softer issues like climate change and equality.
Because of course we are aware of the fact that there are going to be a couple of free ports.
Yes.
Up in the northern area,
Yep.
and that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
That certainly is a good thing, and that will help the reindustrialization, manufacturing, assembly, these sort of things. Perhaps even companies that will supply chips, the silicon ones, rather than the potato.
Well, they're always good at the potato ones.
Well, they are, yes. Especially chips are all.
Let's now annoy our friend Ali McPherson by mentioning Scotland.
Yes. Scotland.
No surprises. Well,
Scotland is England's lost cause. I sense. Yes, there is still a very large SNP majority, and it's a mix of what I call lowlanders with, I would say, a chip on both shoulders, and Bonnie Highlanders who have a more sort of Sir Walter Scott romantic view of what Scotland is.
Yeah.
And it does seem to still be bound together. There are one or two tensions now, for example, over shipping services to the Orkneys and the Hebrides and so on, and also perhaps Shetland Orkneys would rather run their own things than be part of Scotland, frankly. They probably make a better job of it.
But having said that, they do at least still get the sort of subsidies for the ferries and the planes and everything, don't they?
They do indeed. I mean, someone in the Shetland said to me he would be very happy to join Norway.
Right. Well, it's probably closer, isn't it?
I think it's getting on that way. But
am I right in thinking they've now got a clear majority? They haven't had to do a coalition this time round.
Yes, they have. Although they have got the support quote of the Greens on a number of what they regard as strategically important things. And as you know, the First Minister is still looking for an independence referendum quote within this Parliament.
I mean, up to a point you can understand it, I suppose, based on their majority. But that's something we'll have to wait and see as to what's going to happen. But now, continue.
I would give it. I would give them the referendum personally, Tony.
Yeah, and see what goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly the big issue is how independence is going to be funded.
Yeah.
How much they're expecting from England. I suppose their oil reserves are going up in value at the moment.
Guess so. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And it's also very interesting. I know someone who lives in Aberdeen in the technology sector, and he's working on a project whereby all the North Sea oil service providers are going onto the same technology platform for all aspects of delivery. So there is a slight resurgence in the oil industry in Scotland, and that may help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what always surprises me is that Wales, Plaid Cymru, doesn't seem to be able to get the sort of enthusiasm that the Scottish nationalists get.
I mean, Wales is small. What is it, about 3 million people?
Yeah, something like that, isn't it?
About 3 million, and they've gone much more for what I call cultural identity.
Yeah,
if you like. I mean, the language is much stronger. They're much more conscious of their cultural heritage, dare I say, than Scotland, whose cultural heritage was invented by Walter Scott in his novels. But
yeah.
But I think they do recognise that they don't have the capacity and capabilities of being fully independent. I think they would like much more of a federal approach, more services delegated powers.
But the question is, why can't Plaid make a bit more of an inroad? Why can't they be controlling the Welsh Parliament?
I think that there are people who live in Wales who don't feel part of the Welsh cultural identity. In other words, they didn't speak the Welsh language. It was imposed on them at school. So they don't feel that sort of cultural affinity. And I think that is why Plaid Cymru in some ways fails to, will always fail to become a majority party.
Yeah. Now, Northern Ireland. I was quite surprised that Sinn Féin
How long you got?
Yeah, well, not that long because Zoom only give us 40 minutes these days. But I was pretty surprised to see Sinn Féin actually see off the unionists in the way they did.
Well, so was I, but they actually didn't get they didn't get many more votes. Obviously, the alliance came up strongly.
Yeah.
So they are majority just, and that did surprise me. And I suppose the alliance, in some way, however, is going to have to kind of bridge that gap. The unionists in the different colours probably are still a majority, but they are of different colours.
Yeah.
But it's not very helpful at this time, particularly when the protocol is under attack from the UK government, and where there is a lot of clearly resistance to change from the European Commission.
How do you think it'll pan out?
I think ultimately they will come to an agreement, but it will mean eroding one or two elements of the protocol. I think the protocol will stay in place, but some elements will go, and obviously the obvious ones are goods. Some way of ensuring that goods that go into Northern Ireland that aren't going to go to the south are not subject to rigorous checks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was listening to a haulage contractor on the Today programme this morning, and he was saying the amount of paperwork is unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I think the European Commission gloats in this level of discomfort, and it is a bureaucratic force. But some of that paperwork will be there. But I think there are some areas where it will be eroded. I think the protocol will stay in place, albeit pared down a bit.
Robert, do you think that Sinn Féin, if at the next election, will actually send MPs to Westminster, or can they just keep resisting this business?
I think they will continue to resist. I think the biggest challenge which is going to come to Sinn Féin is the next general election in the south.
Yeah,
where they are putting up a very strong case, and there's as much resistance to them in the south as there is in the north. Sinn Féin, forget its heritage, but Sinn Féin is quite a left-wing, big spending party.
Yeah, radical.
Of its policy. Absolutely, forget the unification issue, and I don't think Ireland has the financial stomach or enthusiasm to take on the funding of the north.
Last time round in the Republic of Ireland, it went about three ways, didn't it? In terms of so I mean, it was only a coalition between the two existing parties that kept Sinn Féin out.
Exactly, but they are not. Well, they have a growing vote there, but there is not wholesale enthusiasm there either for Sinn Féin or for its unification ambitions. And I think that is medium term going to be a bigger challenge to them as much as the UK.
Yeah,
frankly.
Yeah. Now let's get on to the subject of levelling up. Have you?
Right.
And I expect you to do it in the Robert McDowall voice all the way through, if you don't mind, based on Mr. Gove the other week.
Yes, I mean, the levelling up will come to some extent through what I call reindustrialization, the manufacturing, assembly, having national rather than international supply chains. And so I think the North will benefit from those and the services that surround them. And that, I suspect, is the way levelling up will come. Another interesting aspect is as we have increased, inflation is not the same across the country.
No.
And some elements of inflation, like food and non-alcoholic drink, the inflation rates are slightly lower in the North than in the South. Equally, transport, it is an issue, but it doesn't factor quite as much as it does in the South. So I think your levelling up will come, and there will be a bit of smoke and mirrors element to it.
Yeah, as is quite often the case. Now let's get on to this question of windfall taxes on the oil and gas companies. I didn't actually see anyone helping BP out when they had that dreadful Gulf of Mexico crisis.
No, well, quite, and that was seen as the company's own problem.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And now they are beneficiaries of the Ukraine war and the Russia's action on energy. Then they are doing very substantially well. What they must be careful of is in these windfall taxes is BP, Shell, and others are in the process of making that transition to what one might call clean or green energy.
Yeah.
And to the extent that those profits are deployed in that direction, I think it would totally be totally wrong to king them for a windfall tax, frankly, Tony. So you have to segment the profits.
Yeah, and Robert, is it not true that they pay a higher rate of corporation tax in any case?
They do. They do, and also they used to get very large tax allowances against their what I loosely call their plant and machinery, and they don't any longer.
So it's not quite as good as it used to be from their point of view in any case.
Yes. I mean, yes. It's there's a lot of let's get money out of the successful.
Yeah, as ever. But don't you think possibly the government should approach it on the basis that we're not going to levy a windfall tax, but we want to see a commitment of some of those profits into green energy?
Yes. Exactly. I mean, I think they could accelerate some of the moves towards green and clean energy, and to the extent that those profits can be traceable, auditable to that, then I don't think there should be a windfall tax.
Okay. Your Votes for Life Act, which you've been very involved with, has gone through, and were you surprised in terms of the timing and everything?
It was supposed to be this year, but with frankly more important issues like the Ukraine war, energy, cost of living, I thought it would come later. It sort of popped out suddenly. Was it the 28th of April? As part, the Votes for Life is part of a bigger. It's called the Elections Act, and it covers things like voter identity. Funding for parties and so on, but certainly the votes for life, votes for UK expats, what is a major part of it. But there is going to have to be quite a lot of secondary legislation, statutory instruments, which will follow this. So my sense, it was rushed. The principles are there now, but some of the detail it will have to be explained in secondary legislation, which is we read supposed to come in before the next election, on the basis the next election is not till 2024.
I mean, I think a lot of expats may feel possibly that they shouldn't get involved. And another thing that's been put to me in the past is, well, if we do sort of register, are we likely to get clobbered for inheritance tax and things like that?
No, you're not. And I have to say, I'm a little annoyed with one or two of the accountants in Guernsey and Jersey who have suggested that. There is a specific HMRC tax practice directive, which, and I can send it to you if you like, which actually states that by voting or continuing to vote in UK general elections, you in no way change the tax position that you are in.
Yeah. Okay.
And I suspect that in the secondary legislation, there will be something which will expand on that.
And that's set in stone. That's set in stone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, can you say
that's set in stone? Yeah.
But based on what you've learned about it, you have to register. There's a special process. How long does the registration take?
That's right.
How long does it last? Once you register?
Okay, right. The registration lasts for 3 years. You'll renew it every 3 years. To register, if you're not registered, you have to provide some evidence that you or your family did live. If I can take railway cuttings, Cheam, for example.
Yeah. Well, where else?
And you, where else? And you write. You write to the electoral returning officer advising that you, father, mother, lived at such and such an address, and your mother and father do not have had to even been on the electoral roll, but the electoral returning officer will have to go back through records to verify that indeed Mr. McDowall did live at railway cuttings, Cheam.
Next to Hancock.
Yeah, Mr. Hancock, that's right. And the yes, quite. You see, and I think that the other thing is that the UK government is putting in about £2 or £3 million to the electoral returning officers in the different constituencies, so they can use a little bit more administrative assistance in the verification over this next couple of years.
Are they still thinking about reviewing the boundaries of the constituencies?
Yes, they are. That theoretically should come through over this next year or two in time for the 2024 election, and it will, I'm afraid, benefit the Conservatives.
Yeah. Well, other parties are available.
But yeah.
Okay.
Yes, other parties are. Yeah.
Let's get on to the British overseas territories now. I mean, the BVI business was a bit of a shock when the Prime Minister got arrested in the States for money laundering and other activities.
Well, we get periodic bouts of this. The gentleman who came here to be the first chief executive,
David Jeremiah and the Turks and Caicos.
Caicos, yes. And when he left, the UK government imposed direct rule because of drugs, money laundering, and so on. These are small jurisdictions where perhaps one or two people or groups can have overriding influence. And I think you're always going to get these sort of issues unless you have a a governor or governor general, lieutenant governor, who has strong executive powers. But of course, that wouldn't go down very well.
Yeah. They are, of course, the remnants of the old empire, and presumably they were sort of locations which were not capable of being self-sufficient.
Exactly. Financially, economically, they were not capable of being sufficient. I mean, I frankly think the UK would be very happy to hand them over to the United States as they're in their backyard, but I don't think that would go down very well with the people in those islands. So they are going to continue to be an irritation.
Yeah.
In a number of ways from time to time.
Because the thing is that as I see it, we provide diplomatic and defence services to the British overseas territories.
Yep.
Do they make any contribution to that, or?
No, they don't. No, they don't. And some of them indeed receive aid.
Yeah.
So there's a level of paternalism and old-style colonialism, I suppose, in the delivery of those services, as you rightly say.
But you know, you can sort of say, well, Gibraltar's strategic still, in my view. The Falklands and the British Antarctic area is still strategic.
Absolutely.
But some of the others aren't, are they?
No, I mean the mix of islands in the Caribbean are there is a mix of tourism.
Yeah.
Some have a little bit of agriculture
and a bit of financial services.
A bit of financial services, and of course, those are being eroded because of the international restrictions and more taxation. More strict money laundering and so on. So I think they're going to have continue to have a tough time, and I think the best thing they can do is tourism, frankly.
Yeah, sure. I think you're probably right there. Let's get on to a local subject now. Guernsey tax.
Oh yes.
Yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Zero. You know, how do you see it? Because I'm totally confused. But it seems to me that 010 has never worked.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. It was a reaction to events in the last decade, in the decade 2000, 2010, and it was
sure.
It was there to buttress the financial services industry, frankly.
Yeah. What's your view about them going on to a global 15% arrangement, which is?
Well, I think they have to go on to somewhere between 10 and 15%. You might haggle at 12.5%, but certainly 12.5 to 15%. And I think that is going to be way to the future. I plugged into there was a tax webinar from the Policy and Resources Group in Guernsey at the end of April.
Yeah.
And they actually thought, based on average taxation levels for corporate profits, that it would only make a modest 8 to 10 million pound contribution to the deficit. Now, I don't think that's really the point. I think if Guernsey and Jersey and others are going to continue to hold their own in financial services, then I think they will have to adopt international standards with regard to corporation tax. And it also brings me to a very interesting issue with Alderney. Alderney's got its own antiquated company law, which I won't go into now, but will Alderney have to join in imposing corporation tax?
Guess it would, wouldn't it?
Well, I think so. And presumably, would those taxes go to Alderney, or would they, like the income tax, go to Guernsey?
Yeah.
Some interesting questions coming up, I think.
Well, that's right. I mean, it seems to me that the politicians are hell bent on going the GST route.
Yeah, at this time, if they did go that route, then inflation would rocket way over 10%, way over 10%.
Yeah.
I mean that again, that came up in this webinar, and the two very interesting things. In terms of enacting the legislation, they desperately want to get it over the line in this Guernsey parliamentary session.
Yeah.
Although they admit it's going to be close, and the implementation will be afterwards. The infamous Mr. Roffey said he didn't want taxation being the major issue, as it would get in the way of housing and social security and health. Well, in fact, those feed off taxation. So
yeah, well, that's right. You used to be the chairman of the Alderney Finance Committee.
Yes.
How can government run a deficit of 80 million a year and still have grandiose ideas?
Well, it can't, unless it is going to try to emulate the UK and start to issue many more Guernsey government bonds. The first one had it, but then no, it cannot do that. It cannot do that. It has to tailor its tailor its requirements, and grandiose schemes like tunnels to Jersey, these big infrastructure schemes, it cannot do. And unfortunately, it isn't in a position like other jurisdictions to go cap in hand to supranational banks and funding institutions. They will laugh and say, get your financial services business to cop up.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, when they sort of talk about this deficit of 80 million, the one thing that they're forgetting every time is our old friend, the staff pension scheme deficit.
Well, that's a lurking time bomb, which is, quote, off balance sheet.
Yeah. And
actually, that is an interesting point, because I emailed the Policy and Resource Committee, when are they going to move to international accounting standards?
Yes, yeah.
And they're on their way, although they mandated to do it in 2012, but they're on their way.
So they are getting it underway.
They are getting on, but those sort of things would show up if they had proper international accounting. But you're right, it's the biggest time bomb under the financial time bomb under the states of Guernsey,
and to a lesser extent Alderney,
and Alderney as well. But to a lesser extent.
Yeah. Well, there we are. Mr. Zoom is telling me that we've only got 3 minutes left, so I think this is probably a good time to say thank you very much for sparing me some time. Always good to talk to you.
Pleasure.
And we'll be in touch later on in the year, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. Many thanks indeed, then, Tony.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.